Screen times, iPad kids, audiobooks, Pokemon, Nintendos, toddler naps, all of that and more in today's live session. I am answering your Q&As and we have plenty of them. And today we're going to focus on your screen time Q&As. Let's start with a question from Gemma, and she asks, I know screen time is bad for my kids and we need to cut down. I have dramatically with iPads. I have cut down. I only allow it when I'm preparing dinner. However, my eldest, who is 5, is obsessed with Pokemon and plays the game on my Nintendo. I'm having trouble restricting that because he is learning, he's engaging, and Pokemon is his current hyperfocus. I suspect he might have autism and ADHD. We have the card game and we play it nightly, but he has no interest in the figures for role play. His only activities at present are playing Pokemon or drawing the Pokemon in his drawing pad. How can I allow him to indulge and engage in his hyperfocus theme if it's specifically a screen-based thing, but still protect his brain? Fantastic question, Emma. Thank you so much for being here, Gemma. And I just want to say, first of all, an important disclaimer is that I am not an expert on any kind of neurodivergent condition. Many of my students inside the studio have children with neurodivergencies, such as autism and ADHD, but these terms are massive umbrella terms that hold within them a very wide spectrum of different behaviors and different developments. And so I just want to be clear that this is the type of thing that I can just answer intuitively from what I know and from what I've researched, but it's not going to be a specified diagnostic response. Okay, important disclaimer. Okay, so those of you joining me live, hi, say hello in the chat. Make sure that you let me know where in the world you are and how old your children are. We are here as part of our April's No Question Goes Unanswered theme. I am bringing you my coaching. I'm taking it out from behind the paywall in the studio and bringing it to you here on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever you are, so that you can test drive me. You can see if I'm the right coach for you, if you like my style, if you like the answers, if this is helpful for you. And if so, then I warmly invite you into the studio. By the way, the early bird pricing on the studio is ending at the end of this week. So make sure you're getting in there. If you're curious, if you'd like to test it out, it's really risk-free and I would love to have you in there. Let's answer Gemma's question and then let's keep going because I have so many more. All right, the first one I want to say is that it's important to understand that you are looking at your screen time, right, as a tool for your child, right? Now, I think that not all screen time is created equal. I think some screen time is beneficial. You can do it more freely. You can allow your child more time on it, especially if it involves specific things. For example, physical movement. Okay, screen time, I don't know enough about Pokemon Switch, but I believe that often you are moving around, right? That you are engaged. Although maybe if it's on a Nintendo, it is sedentary. But I know, let's say Pokemon Go, is it, right? When you're looking for creatures like geolocations and stuff, right? Then you're moving around, you're walking around, maybe you're even hiking, right? That's a completely different experience than sitting sedentarily and playing a game with your hands. And that's a different experience than watching a screen passively like a movie, okay? So Pokemon on Nintendo could be framed as a learning engagement activity for specific children with those types of needs and those type of hyperfocuses, if it's still kind of limited and structured, right, to balance it with the off-screen pursuits like the drawing or storytelling based on the game or making those characters out of clay or, setting up board games about it or the card games that you mentioned, putting on a show about Pokemon, dressing up as Pokemon, right? You could bring in drama, arts and crafts, expression, music, activities, physical play, all sorts of other plays that can also focus on his hyperfocus. Now, I'm not an expert, as I said, on autism. I'm not sure that you want to necessarily always encourage a hyperfocus. I think it's important for your child to try to round out the experience with other types of pursuits that aren't only this one, right? And so for that reason, I would create a rhythm, right? Like a predictable routine where the Pokemon game time happens, say, for 45 minutes, right, a day, but only after outdoor play, only after chores and help around the household, only after social interactions and time that we've spent with friends, maybe in the playground, right? And that will respect this hyperfocus and cater to it, but also train flexible transitions, alternative pursuits that your child needs to develop, right? And I would just say that inside the studio, I have a screen-wise workshop that is all about all the 6 things that I think every child should have to do every single day before you even get the screens out. Okay. I think there are 6 things that kids need. Things like I've just said here, like physical motion, like social interaction, like chores and household help, that you should make sure kind of to check off that checklist. I'll give you the checklist inside the studio. Um, in order to know that your child is meeting their other needs before they kind of veg out in front of a screen, even if it's something that is educational, because the screen is so dopamine heavy, the screen is so addictive, the screen is so alluring, it's very hard to then compete with it and draw a child out of that to play outdoors, to play with friends, to get artistic, to get creative, to read, that kind of thing. Today, we're going to answer all of these questions. We're going to talk about audiobooks. We're going to talk about Naptime. We're going to talk about divorce and co-parenting and screen limits and all of that stuff. I have a lot of really good questions to get through, but I am sometimes going to say that answer is inside the studio because I have built a whole entire program about this, and I would love for you to join and really get all of the curriculum. Okay, and then I would also say use this interest to build a new skill. You may have caught my YouTube video. If you haven't, go back and watch it, about how you can use any topic to teach any subject. So I brought the example of Harry Potter. My son was really obsessed with Harry Potter, and we used it to learn geography, history, art, music. There were so many, right? Reading and writing, numeracy, all of these different things were used through the Harry Potter theme, right? Because you can then build science classes based off of certain chapters and themes. You can then talk about the architecture that is inside the sets of Harry Potter and the world that he comes from, etc. You can talk about all sorts of influences, philosophical influences, religious influences into the writing and into the themes that are there, etc. So you can channel the obsession offline as well, right? Writing his own Pokémon stories, inventing new characters, building real world Pokedex, right? So that screens aren't the only way for him to scratch this itch. All right, Gemma, I hope that helps. Let me know what you think, if this is going to help you. Just to summarize for you, to make it really, really clear, I would redefine this. Okay, this is a tool. We're going to use it once a day for 45 minutes, say. Make sure that that's happening after he does other things like social interactions, like getting outdoors, and then use this to actually branch out to off-screen activities as well. All right, let's move on to our next question, and it is from Iluna, I think. And she writes, I love the clarity of this video and your ideas. I allow my son to watch a movie once a week on Friday, and we watch it together. I appreciate that time, and yet I think there are more constructive time when he plays, even when he's bored or frustrated. For me, my parents raised me without TV as a child, and I played a lot and read a lot of books. I'm certainly grateful for that. However, I am separated, and both my son's father and his paternal grandmother do not set rules for the child, either regarding screen time or more important things. For example, if the child doesn't want to have a proper hygiene, they let him not bathe or not brush his teeth without any consequences. If it's cold in winter, they let him go out without a coat. They'll do nothing to prevent it because that's what the child wants. So I have a big dilemma. Should I impose my values and ask them to answer for them? So far, I've never been able to discuss it seriously with either of them because of this fear of being too demanding. After all, they have every right to raise a child from other visions if I don't like them and don't agree with them, even if I don't like them, right? Still, I must admit it is an issue that generates suffering for me. P.S. The child lives with me but visits them 2 or 3 days a week. Okay. So now we're kind of veering a little bit away from the actual pure screen time question, right? And into the question of how we balance our vision, our expectations, our demands and values for our child, like, for example, him having limited screen time or taking a bath or wearing a coat in the winter, with other people in the child's life. And in this case, it's the other parent who Iluna, you are right that the other parent has just as much rights as you do to have their own ideas and their own vision and their own rules. So I really, I admire that you respect that. I admire that you are giving space to them doing it in their way, and that you are aware of yourself and aware that you shouldn't be too demanding or too controlling of their life with your son. Having said that, depending on the nature of your relationship with your co-parent, with your son's father, I think it would be wise to try to establish some ground rules that you both try to follow. In cases of extreme conflict and tension and friction in a divorce, parents often just cannot have these conversations. They use the child kind of as a tool for revenge and for control of each other, and they are absolutely not interested in hearing what the co-parent wants or believes in or has read or has experienced or has tried. And sometimes it will even trigger rebellion, like the other parent is gonna purposefully not do what you ask them to do because you asked them to do it, even if it's in the child's best interest. That is really, really sad, but I know that this happens in many cases. I've seen this with many of my students. So with caution, I say, if you have the type of relationship where you can discuss this type of thing, then I don't think it's too demanding to advocate for your child's well-being. Right? Setting expectations, asking for consistency on basic health things, right? Like brushing teeth, which really is very clearly in the child's best interest, is part of protecting your child. I don't think that in any way is going to be perceived as controlling others, especially if you phrase it in a way that is only seeing the child's best interest at heart, right? Like, I'm here to help our child grow strong and healthy, and that means having healthy oral hygiene, good sleep patterns, wearing the appropriate clothes for the weather, and not spending too much time in front of a screen. And when you have that conversation, and we'll talk in a moment about the type of tone of voice and the type of scripts you can use to have it, I would just say, I don't think that this is about controlling the other parents or being too demanding. This is about seeing your child's best interest. And I really encourage you to be strong in that and to try and pursue that as best as you can. I think you do need to be careful with yourself and just decide, okay, what truly matters? What is absolutely non-negotiable? Okay. Hygiene, sleep, emotional safety, maybe also screen time limits. These are the types of things that maybe are going to be non-negotiable, right? But there are going to be some flexible zones where you might say, well, that's just up to them. I'm not going to come down like a ton of bricks and try and control every aspect of what they're doing with my kid, right? And the non-negotiable things, you do need to communicate them respectfully, but also really clearly to your co-parent and to his mother. Right. Now, you can accept differences in style, right? But you don't need to accept differences in core values, right? You don't need to compromise on core values. If you have any chance of getting through to them, I would make every effort to do so. Okay. And so, because it is with the child's best interest in heart, you really want to tell his dad, listen, can we get on the same page about this? I know you and I are separated and I have no real say in what you do in your home, but I think it will be in our child's best interest if he has a certain consistency across his homes. Right now, I do want to set your mind at ease, which is that he lives with you and he's visiting them 2 or 3 times a week, which means that what he does with you really is the most influential thing on him, right? That's the most amount of time. That's his norm. Even if he spent all the time at his father's house on screen time, it still wouldn't mean that he's spending his whole week like that, right? That's only a few hours a week. But I do suggest that you try to create some sense of unity, because one of the things that really messes with a kid's mind, right, is when there's complete inconsistency between homes. They can still get over that. They can still manage. They can still adjust and adapt. Kids are smart and they understand. Similar to when kids have 2 different languages spoken, right? They can learn. I know kids who speak 4 or 5 languages and they just learn who speaks what language and they can adjust and adapt. Their brains are really powerful in that way. But we don't want to put that kind of strain on them when it comes to values. It would be better for them to learn that this is just how it's done. It just also makes your parenting easier. Okay, so lead with a calm confidence, not with conflict. And now I'm going to really help you to frame the conversation. So what's really important is that you frame the conversation as collaborative, okay, not combative. You're not controlling them. You're not criticizing them. You're not saying that you set the tone or you decide because you're the mom or because he lives with you or that kind of thing. But you just say, hey, I wanted to discuss something with you. I thought it would be really great if we could all get on the same page for Johnny's sake, right? Can we agree on some shared basics so that he feels secure and gets a consistent message and he builds good habits? For example, if he always brushes his teeth at home, but then he doesn't brush his teeth with you, then I think that breaks the habit and it also really is going to cause tooth decay. Can we get on the same page about A, B, C, and D? And just give a few simple non-negotiable things that you want to ask. Would it be okay if we kind of, work together to build consistency on this? Okay, Luna, I hope that answers your question. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. And we are going to move on to the next question. And Kenzie asks, by the way, if you're here live, say hello. Let me know where you are in the world in the chat right now. Hi, Vera. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to see you. Hi, Emma, Rachel, Sam, Joe, Fatma, Kai, Anya, Boss Up with Tweens and Teens, Ridis, Being Inspired Mama, hello, Eruver, Jelena, the Foozies, welcome everyone, hello, and many more. It's so good to see your names here. Some old friendly names and some new names. So good to see you. Let me know where you are in the world, how old your kids are, and if you have any questions for me. We are on our April No Question Goes Unanswered family reset, and so make sure that you send them in to me. You can just pop them in the DMs. You can leave me a comment on my YouTube video that is coming out tomorrow. That would probably be the best way. I'll be sure to see those. And if you want to DM me on Instagram, that's also fine. I also want to let you know that I have a really special PDF guide called How to Raise Kids with Common Sense and Values. This one is very juicy. It shares the 5 values that I think are missing in the 21st century and that all of us parents should be teaching at home, because these are values that will not be taught in school. And it shares tactics on how to actually raise kids with common sense and values, which I think everyone in my audience, that's what you guys want. Like, that's what we're all here for. So make sure to get that by just DMing me the word values on Instagram, or I think you can just leave me a comment on my recent post with the word values, and we will send you a DM with the PDF. So make sure that you get your hands on that. It's free and you have nothing to lose, and I think you'll love it. Okay, my next question is from Kenzie. She says, oh no, sorry. First, we have Michelle, who says, do you consider an online Zoom class 1 to 2 times a week screen time? Do you consider listening to an audiobook screen time? And she wasn't the only one who asked me about audiobooks. So let me just find the other questions here, all about audiobooks, because we have a lot of them. Lisa also said, do you practice time for audiobooks, or do these fall in the same categories as screens? Country Bumpkin said, is there such a thing as too much audiobook? My 5-year-old absolutely loves audiobooks, and he will literally listen all day long if I let him. I try to be very choosy about what we pick for him, and we are very strict about screen time. The piece that I get from him listening to stories on audio feels like it must be wrong. He is particularly difficult child in general, just on the day-to-day. Please give me your thoughts. Thanks so much. So lots of questions came in about audiobooks. Let me answer them right now. But first, let me know in the comments, do your children listen to audiobooks or maybe podcasts? How do you feel about it? Do you think that it is screen time? Do you think that it isn't screen time? Do you limit? Do you not limit? What are your thoughts? Okay, so generally speaking, let's start with the Zoom classes. I think Zoom classes, I mean, technically it's screen time, but it's screen time with a purpose. It's part of their education, right? I think it's in the category of interactive, educational, structured tool use, kind of like school or a music lesson. I would not count it the same as passive entertainment. Okay, so no, I would not count that towards like a screen time quota if you're having that. Okay, audiobooks, in my opinion, are not screen time. Okay, I think they are screen-free listening, right? And they fall more under the category of literacy, of imagination, of calm focus, almost closer to listening to music or to reading than to watching something. And I think that's in a large part because of actually how it influences children when they listen to audiobooks. It's much more similar to listening to a story. Well, it is technically listening to a story, but I mean listening to you reading a story, right? To a story hour at the library, than it is to watching something. And that's because when you watch something, first of all of your senses are kind of glued to the screen, right? You're listening and watching, not all of your senses, but the two main ones. And the rapid pace and the kind of the way that you're captured and catapulted into a different world without the use of your imagination. So it's completely passive, right? I think has a very, very different effect on our neurology than listening to a story. Just intuitively, I'll say, and I'm sure there's a lot of evidence for this, but I don't have the research at my fingertips right now. I would say that listening to a story is an ancient, evolved skill that humans have always developed and have needed, right? This is how we've passed on generational wisdom from one generation to another. This is an ancient kind of sitting around the campfire, hearing stories from the elders, listening in and then closing your eyes or just imagining the story. I perceive that as a very healthy way of triggering imagination, vocabulary, all that kind of thing. I think watching like this hallucination almost, right? Like an illusion of another world actually hijacks our brain in a completely different way, because we are used to trusting our eyes. We're evolved to see what's in front of us as reality, right? We're evolved to see that if there's violence in front of us, there's actual violence in front of us. Whereas if we see violence on a screen, our brain still processes it as if it's in front of us. That's why we still have nightmares about it, even though it was just on a screen, right? There's something about what we see versus what we hear that is triggered in our brain as our reality. It's very hard to separate, right? It's very overwhelming, those types of inputs. And therefore, I think audiobooks I'm much more lenient when it comes to audiobooks. Now, I will say that there is such a thing as too much of anything, in my personal opinion. I really personally believe in balance in life. I really believe that there's too much of a good thing, right? There's too much reading. If a kid is reading for 14 hours a day at the expense of moving their body, of being with friends, of their sleep, of developing other skills, then I would limit that. So I'm not just saying this about screens, which I think have been, scientifically proven to have ill effects on our kids' neurological development, social skills, etc., eyesight. But I'm also saying that about good things. A kid who becomes a gym rat, a kid who is always volunteering all day, a kid who is, as I said, reading a book or studying math all day is not going to be balanced. I do personally, I'm much more interested in helping my kids grow horizontal skills versus very deep into one vertical, right? I don't want them to be experts in anything. I want them to be proficient in lots of things. And so, you could take on like, the Venus and Serena Williams' father. What was his name? I can't remember. You could take on his approach where he's like, no, they're going to be experts. They're going to be the best of the best. They're going to be Olympians, right? You could decide, no, my kid is going to be hyper expert at something. And I interviewed a mom a few years ago who said that her kid is a gamer and he games for 14 hours a day. And that's what he does. And he's an expert in it. And this is going to be his career and he's going to be amazing at it. And you might take on that approach. Personally, for me, I would rather equip my kids to have a B minus life in all areas, but to be well-rounded. So, to be physically fit, to be socially fit, to be academically fit, but not to be Olympians in anything, basically. Unless eventually as they grow, maybe they choose to, but usually it's too late. Usually to be like an Olympian, you have to start when you're about 4 or 5. So that's just my personal, strategy and tactic and belief system, is that I believe it is better to have a well-balanced life. And so even if your kid is doing something good, and even if audiobooks are good, and I think they are good, you don't want them to be doing that to the detriment of other things, right? It can't come at the expense of everything else good in their life, okay? So that's all I'll say about that, is that I think it's fine for a few hours a day. But I don't think it's fine, say, for upwards of, 4 or 5 hours a day. At that point, it just starts cutting into other things they need to be doing, like climbing trees, playing with friends, helping with household chores. Now, you say your child is very difficult, for example. I would say, okay, lean on the audiobooks. That's a good one. That's better than screens, right? That's enriching them. There are many really good audiobooks. We've gone through the Magic Treehouse series and Secret 7 and Fantastic 5 and all the Enid Blyton books. And, I share all of my resources inside the studio. We have a fam library project inside the studio where we are all about, coming up with the canon of your library, figuring out what it is that my children should read by the time they're 18. What are the classics, in my opinion? What do I want them reading? What do I want in our library? What do I want in our audiobook library, etc.? That's all stuff that you do want to figure out and you do want to think about. But I'm just saying, I think generally speaking, audiobooks do not count, in my opinion, as screen time. And they are healthy in general, but not to become an addiction and not at the expense of everything else. Okay, let me know in the chat right now if you're joining me live where you are in the world and whether or not your kids love audiobooks and whether or not you limit them. Now, if you do leave me questions in the chat, I might miss them because they move quite quickly. So just make sure to DM me them, or to even better, just put them on my YouTube comments and I will be sure to go through those. Okay, the next question is from... Okay, Kenzie, she writes, do you have any advice on how to get the baby down for a nap with a toddler? I baby wear for the first nap and rock to sleep for the second. My toddler is 22 months old, so he watches Elmo, and dad is home when I do the third nap. Also, we don't sleep train. Okay, so first of all, I'll just say that this is not a strange scenario to me. I've been in that situation so many times. I have 5 children, and with each of them, they were 2 years apart. So I always had a toddler when I was putting a baby down for a nap. So I totally get it. What I would say is that this is one of those moments where you really want to step into parental leadership, where you really want to set the tone of this is what is happening now, especially if you don't want to rely on the screen. Okay. So the first thing is to create a predictable pre-nap ritual. It could be very short. It could just be 5 minutes, but it's to signal the baby's nap for the baby and for the toddler, because toddlers really thrive on rhythm. Toddlers that see, oh, every single day there's a diaper, there's a song, there's white noise. The toddler is part of the plan. The toddler is saying, this is what we're doing now. You're saying, shh, you're rocking the baby. Maybe you're holding the toddler's hand, or you're sitting the toddler down to look at a book, or you're asking the toddler to wait outside the door with some Play-Doh. Right. But the idea is that the toddler sees that there's this ritual. The toddler doesn't have to, if you don't want to, that I think that's why you're asking me, because you'd like to wean the toddler off of Elmo. The toddler doesn't have to have a screen. The toddler just has to have expectations and clarity and predictability. So here's what we do every single day. And the first 2-3 days are a disaster, but by the third day, they get it. And you just get into that rhythm. Okay. So for example, you can give the toddler a nap time job. Okay. They really love helping. Toddlers love to mimic us, right? You can give them the special role, like they're the book holder, they're the blanket tucker, they're the diaper fetcher, right? And that is the teamwork of you and the toddler are getting the baby down for a nap. Now, I'll also just say that I don't know, my toddlers also took naps sometimes up until the age of 3 or 4. So maybe one of those naps, the toddler could lie, in their own bed and also have a nap, and that's also possible. Okay. But the idea is not to say, oh, you're a liability for the nap. You just go over there. Don't disturb us, to make it like high pressure or negative or stressful. It's not a forced separation. It's teamwork. Right. And then I think the other thing that I always advocate for is independent play. What I would often do is strew, which is setting up a new play invitation just as we're starting nap time. So you change the diaper, you do the song, right? The toddler brings the blanket, and then we say goodnight. And now you walk your toddler over to the little table or to the floor where you've set up a new puzzle that they haven't seen that day, or Play-Doh, or some kind of, train set or something that they haven't seen for a while. And you say, you're going to play quietly. We're not talking. I'm going to put the baby to sleep and I'll be back in 10 minutes, right? Maybe the first time you're back in 2 minutes, and then in 5 minutes, and then in 10 minutes. And slowly the toddler understands that while you're actually tucking the baby in, they're playing with this new thing, if that makes sense. Okay. Hi, Sylvia. Sylvia says, Avital, what is your opinion on digitalizing education? Teachers use screens more and more, meaning smart boards that work in the background almost all the time during school hours. Whew, so complicated. So here's my opinion. I mentioned earlier in this live session about balance. I'm not a technophobe. I think technology is useful, and I think we should use it to teach things, right? Like, there's zero reason for lessons to be dry and just reading through an encyclopedia when we have things like, animations and explainer videos and, ChatGPT. These are things that our kids do actually need to learn to master, need to learn from, can benefit from. And I, at least in my own education with my children and in some of the schools that some of my kids are in, they don't, swear off any technology. However, I think technology easily becomes a crutch, and it's kind of like a fire. It spreads and it can burn things down if you're not careful with it. So what do I mean by that? There's this idea that fire is a good slave, but a bad master. Fire, when it's contained, when it's used to cook, when it's used to warm things, when it's used to light things, makes a huge difference to civilization. It moves us forward, right? It really completely revolutionized humanity's experience. But if it's not contained properly, if it's not kept in its proper place, then it's destructive and it burns everything down. And I do fear that in many schools, fire is actually burning down education, right? That kids aren't spending enough time in nature, that kids aren't spending enough time relationally with eye contact, with body language, learning from each other and with each other, that kids aren't moving their bodies enough, that kids aren't having enough hands-on experiencing rather than actually doing the science project. They are watching a video about the science project. And I don't think that that benefits our children. So I think if there's, using calendars, using WhatsApp to connect the teachers and the classroom, things when it's a tool and it's used to organize our classroom, to organize the curriculum, our schedule, to communicate with parents or with kids who were sick that day, when it's a tool to help kids with neurodivergence. I know a lot of kids with autism need their screens in order to communicate. When it's a tool to organize large swaths of people, like in a school, getting on the same page, or all of those kind of things, and once in a while to enrich the learning because there's something powerful to watch or something useful to illustrate that we can't illustrate because it happened in history or something like that, and we can't actually do it in a hands-on way. In that case, I think it's useful. But I do find that many teachers use it as a crutch and use it to kind of escape instruction or to compensate for poor teaching style or for poor classroom management, and most of all for poor pedagogy. Like, I think tough love warning alert, trigger warning, whatever. I think the vast majorities of school have really poor pedagogy. They are not teaching kids, they're just managing classrooms. And in that case, it's no wonder that, they're relying on a screen. But I would just say, I think that when you are teaching, I've had the great privilege of seeing some of my kids' schools. We've been to many different schools over the years. We've homeschooled. We've done lots of different educational things. And our 5 children are all in different environments. So, I get to see a lot of different types of schools and how they operate. And when you see a good teacher and a good school that is well resourced, that doesn't have too many kids, that doesn't have bad behaviors that they have to deal with the whole time, but can actually focus on good pedagogy, it's magical. Like, there's something incredible about that. You really see the love of learning and the engagement, and there's zero need for a screen. One of my kids' schools, it's a Waldorf school, so there are no screens. There are no screens at home either. Like, the kids don't use any screens and have no phones. It's an elementary school, and they are engaged and imaginative, and they're doing all these hands-on, they're doing deep crafts, like really like picking the olives from the trees and crushing them into oil and making a candle, and spinning the wool, and then building a loom, and then looming and weaving, and creating a bag, like these in-depth processes, building bricks from straw and cement and making the bricks and then putting it all together. So when you do that kind of thing, you see that kids learn so beautifully and in such a deep way without the flattening effect, right? Without the dopamine effect, without the strobing effect of a screen, and it maintains their imagination and their curiosity, in ways that are incomparable. As kids get older, I think with teens, with tweens, certainly in college, etc., they're going to start to use the internet more because our economy and our world and our work and our education is all there. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's where my career is. That's where my husband's career is. I don't think that's a problem. I just wouldn't want it to take childhood away from kids. Does that make sense, Sylvia? And does that answer your question? Let me know what you think. Hallie says, any advice on how to lock a browser so that my kindergartner does not leave his online homework and play games? Does not leave. How to lock a browser? I don't know. It depends on your device, etc., but I would just Google that. What I will say is that everybody should definitely have parental controls on devices at home. Even the most trustworthy kids, even the kids who are, completely naive and innocent and would never, go to any naughty sites, can find themselves there. They're fascinating. They're addictive. They're potentially dangerous. So just parental controls really should be like the bare minimum threshold that we have on screens in our household. I don't know how to lock the browser, but I think a quick Google should give you that answer, Hallie. Let me know if that helps. Angie says, Hi, Avital, listening from Queensland, Australia. Hello. Been listening to Reclaim Play and watching your videos. Thank you for the valuable knowledge you share. I've seen such a huge difference in my kids. Angie, that is so amazing to hear. Make sure you join the studio. If you like Reclaim Play, you'll love the studio. It's like Reclaim Play, but much deeper. And it grows with your kids. So it's going to be relevant for years to come. And we have our early bird special right now. So make sure to take advantage of that at highfam.com/studio. All right. I have so many more questions to answer here. I'm very, very happy to continue going. We have a little bit more time, and then I'll jump back on tomorrow or the next day to make sure that I get through the rest, because we've got, dozens here. But in April, no question is going unanswered. If you've sent me in a question and I haven't answered it by the end of April, ping me, make sure that I answer it. I promise I will do my very, very best. Okay. Okay, Chang says, hi, Avital, could you please share your current screen time policy for your kids? As many details as you're comfortable sharing would be wonderful, and how it is different for different ages. With pleasure, Chang. Now, I just want to say this is my screen time policy with my kids, my opinion, me and my husband's ideas, and what is working for us. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily what's going to work for you or what you believe in, but I'll just share kind of what goes on in our home. So I have kids age ranging from 4 to 13. And basically my kids have official quote unquote screen time on Friday. We observe Sabbath. So Friday is a day when we're all doing a lot of chores. We're all preparing meals, getting the house spruced up, cooking for guests that are coming that night, that kind of thing. And at the end of all that, that hard work, my kids have folded laundry, they've washed the floor, they've washed dishes, they've chopped salads, they've set the table. We've worked as a team, and then made sure that their rooms are tidy, help me out with whatever else I need help with, and then they've had their showers and they're all ready to go for Sabbath. And then they sit down for about, I would say, 2 hours max. So it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours of watching. My little three are watching silly cartoons like or sweet cartoons. They're fine, but things like Creature Cases or Wild Kratts or Daniel Tiger, they're kind of aging out of that. But those types of things. They have sometimes watched shows, for example, like Barbie, which is on Netflix, which I just don't like because I think it promotes materialism and kind of, just like gossiping and being unkind and that kind of thing. Now, I might be really unfairly judging the show just based on a couple of interactions that I watched. But I was like, you know what, guys, I don't love the way they treat each other in that show. Let's watch something else. I'm less worried about scary ideas than I am about poor behaviors and poor morals and values. Because I think, contending with the idea that there are scary things, there are baddies in the world, there are people who do bad things is important to understand and contend with. But watching people be snarky and mean to each other, I think, is a bit contagious. And so that's something I'm more concerned about. And anyway, so they watch that. And then my older two will probably spend that hour and a half playing video games. They will play things like Brawl Star, Minecraft, sometimes even some violent games like Call of Duty. I think it's called that, or maybe it's something else. I get a bit confused between the games. But anyway, I don't mind. I don't mind war games. I don't mind building games. I don't mind races. I don't mind fighting games. My kids play Nerf guns. My kids play guns and war games. So that's something that doesn't particularly bother me. And I haven't seen any research to make me concerned about it. But I am concerned about kind of suggestive or pornographic or innuendo or sexual content for young kids. That's something I'm more aware of. So my boys are more into kind of I don't know what to call it, like not quite James Bond, but James Bond style, right? Like heists and goodies and baddies, Harry Potter, those types of things. And those are the types of things that they would opt to watch if they were watching. So that's happens on once a week, and then it could be that it would happen more than once a week. Say, for example, if there was a day off school and the night before they were doing a sleepover and they wanted to watch a movie, or if someone's not well, they're going to watch, or if someone's or if we're traveling and there's like long distance travel, they're going to be watching. If Once in a while, we'll just do a family movie. So I have a list of movies that I would like my kids to see that they will never choose to see in their screen time. Things like The Sound of Music or Fiddler on the Roof or Oliver Twist or all sorts of classics that I grew up with. Let's say if we're going to go and see a play, let's say we went to see the play of Oliver Twist, I want them to watch the movie. Now, it's very old-fashioned and very slow and very old. And so that we would just do on a random evening during the week. I would say, hey, guys, let's do a family movie. Let's watch this movie. I want you to see. I want you to learn the music. I want you to know about the story. We'll read the book, so let's say we read the Paddington Bear series. So when we finished the Paddington Bear series, we watched the Paddington Bear movie together. So that was just a random movie night in the middle of the week. That might happen too. And then my eldest has access to a smartphone, which has parental controls. It has no games. It has no entertainment, but it does have WhatsApp because his school uses WhatsApp. And also because he's very independent. So he gets around on buses. He gets around by himself. He needs the map. He needs to pay for the buses with the phone. Everything's with a phone, right? So these are the types of things that I actually need him to have. It really helps me. He runs errands for me. He'll go to the supermarket. I need him to be able to video call me and all of that stuff. So he has that, but it does have parental controls and he's not to use any social media. So we don't have any access to social media and I don't intend to for years to come. Does that answer your question? I hope it does. Please feel free to follow up with any follow-up questions. Teeny says, hiya, do you use screen time as a reward and remove it as a consequence? Listening from Ripon, UK, and love your membership to the studio. Hello, so good to see you. Amazing to have you in the studio. Okay, so I do my best not to. I do my best to just leave it as this neutral thing, but it is, in a sense, a reward because, as I said, we do a lot of chores on Friday. We clean the whole house together. We have a lot of work to do. And then we relax and watch before we bring in the Sabbath. And so if a child is acting really badly or rudely or refusing to help or whatever, then yeah, I would say, you know what, you're going to lose your screen time today. And I would use it as a logical consequence to poor behavior. It's rarely happened. And I guess it is a bit of a potent threat, but I try not to use it as an empty threat, right? Like, I mean it. If you're really not showing up to the day, if you're really not finishing the work that you have to get done, if you're really not, if you're behind on school stuff that you have to get done, that kind of thing, then we're not going to sit down and watch. So to me, it's a very logical consequence. I also could not just sit and Netflix and chill if I haven't finished my work. But yes, even if they're behaving poorly to their siblings, and I would say to them, I would like you to make the right decision for the right reason, right? I would like them to be kind to their siblings because being kind is the right thing to do. And if that's not enough of an incentive, if you're not intrinsically motivated to do the right thing, then we will use extrinsic motivations like screen time removal. So for example, when we drive on the road, most of us are driving carefully because we want to be careful, because we are intrinsically motivated not to get hurt or hurt others. But some people need extrinsic motivations, right? Some people need to get a fine in order to learn to drive at a normal speed, right? And I think that with parenting, sure, we want intrinsic motivation to be the main motivator, but there are times that at the end of the day, we're all animals with behavioralist instincts, and there are times when doing the right thing just because it's the right thing isn't enough of a motivator, and then we kind of need to throw other things at it to get the right behaviors. Does that answer your question, Teeny? I hope it does. I don't use it as a reward, by the way. It is a reward in and of itself. It is a dopamine hit. It is rewarding to watch a screen, but I don't say, hey, if we do all of this and this and this, you'll get screen time, right? Screen time is just on Fridays, at 3 p.m. or whatever it is, and that way I don't need to keep calculating it, if that makes sense, or keep negotiating. I don't want my kids to think that they can keep behaving in particular ways to unlock more screen time. It's like, no, screen time is there. If you don't behave properly, it won't be there. But if you do, then it's just a reliable thing. Okay, excellent. Okay, hi Jess, watching before 6 a.m. Very early good morning to you. You say, any advice on after cutting screen time a month ago with our 3 and 5-year-old? Our weekends are too open-ended and no one knows where to go and what to do. I ended this weekend with a lot of emotional burnout. Oh, Jess, I so feel you. By the way, I do have a lot of advice. Jess, are you in the studio? I'm asking this because I very much want you to join if you're not, because inside the studio, one of the things that we do is that every quarter we take on a new family project. Okay. And the family project could be things like having a family meal together, getting out in nature together, being tech free together, doing a team clean together, getting fit together, maybe hosting an event with our community, like friends and family. There are, our family albums, looking at our family albums together, playing games around a campfire together, singing songs, looking at our family tree and our roots and our history and our legacy, and learning more about who we are and where we come from. These are, what I've just said, are all projects inside of the studio. Now, it's too much for any parent to do all of that at once. But if you establish them slowly, you could start to build a really fulfilling, meaningful, juicy family culture that doesn't need the screens in order to fill the time and isn't going to burn you out. So Jess, you say you're not in the studio, so I warmly invite you in. You can give it a test run, right? Try it out. If it's not for you, you can always unsubscribe in the future, but I would strongly and warmly invite you in, because that's exactly what I can help you do, is to establish a family culture where you do know what to do and where to go. Okay, we talk about establishing our morning routines, our evening routines. What is our culture based off? So Jess, I'm going to just flood your brain for a minute. I know it's too much, okay? But I just want to get the juices flowing and get the cogs turning, if that's okay with you, so that you can start to consider, wait, what would my ideal weekend look like? I have this precious gift of time with my young children before they grow up. I have this precious gift of a weekend where hopefully I'm not working, where they're home, where we're together. And I want to fill it with something meaningful. Right? The reason you're feeling burnt out is because there's decision fatigue, there's analysis paralysis, there's overwhelm. What should I do next? What should I do now? But what I want to help you do is get organized in your thoughts and treat this very precious gift of time as the exceptional and meaningful resource that it is, but also to use it to your advantage to craft a family culture that produces the kind of kids you would like to raise. Okay. So for example, I want to raise kids that are team players, that know how to be self-sufficient, that know how to work hard, have work ethic, that can be team players. So for example, I want kids who know what it's like to work together, to clean up the kitchen together, to clean up the meal together, to wash up, to cook the meal together. Okay. I want kids who are connected to nature. I think it's really, really protective of their mental health, of their physical health. I want kids who can enjoy a hike, who aren't going to whine and complain every step of the way, but get strong and enjoy balancing and seeing the views and helping each other and having the picnic and roughing it a little bit and that kind of thing. I want to raise my kids to enjoy, slower games, not always screens, right? So board games, family games, quality time, maybe playing card games or Monopoly or Catan or whatever it might be. Kids who know how to host other people, right? Lots of different things that because I spend all these years in the studio, I craft my vision every single year. In May, we're going to start Vision Month, where we really start to articulate, just like a CEO of an organization would articulate, what is the vision? What mission are we on? What are our goals? What do we want to accomplish? What are the life skills that we want to give our children? What do we want to model for them? Those types of things. And then as a result of that vision, downstream from that vision is our family habits. What do we do? Right? It's like, oh, well, we get up every Saturday and we have brunch with our community because community connection is really important to us. And, taking pride in our home and in hosting is really important to us. Or we get up every Saturday and we go on a hike because being out in nature and being tech free and connecting as a family is really important to us. Or we get up and do our sports because fitness and health and wellness is top of our list on our vision, right? Or we work on building our shed together because we have this big vision that we're going to grow chickens, and we start building our shed every Saturday. We're building towards a home project for that reason. Okay. So 3-year-old and 5-year-old is not too young to start to establish these types of family culture. Are you with me, Jess? Do you see where I'm going with this? And to start structuring your weekends in a way that reflects your highest goals, who you want to be as a mom, that, fantasy of what family life could be like, how blissful it could be, how meaningful it could be, right? How productive it could be. Now, you can't do all of that at once, but you can do those things one step at a time. And that's the type of thing that I can pace you through inside of the studio. Ideally, I would love you to get to a place where you know exactly what your weekends look like, right? You know exactly, I do. And everyone in the studio, at least, is working towards that. And it's not always perfect. There are still conflicts. There's still burnout. There's still days where I'm just like, oh, I'm done, right? But at least I have a structure to rely on, right? I don't need the school. I don't need the screen. We're home, just us. I know what we're doing. We're getting out for our walk with our dog. We're going to spend some reading time. We're going to spend some time working together as a family in the kitchen. We're going to spend some time having friends over. We're going to spend some time playing board games, that type of thing, if that makes sense to you. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, Jess. Let me know in the comments if that makes sense. Okay, Sylvia says, thank you for your answer. What happens is using smart boards instead of physical manuals. Basically, the screen is on all the time to work together with the kids and explain. I'm in Romania. Okay, we visited Romania last year and it was wonderful. It was so much fun to be in Romania. It's a really, really cool country. We saw loads of bears and castles and it was magical. Anyway, with that said, yeah, I understand. So the screen is basically being used as a tool. And I think in that case, it's not as bad, right? As if it's constantly being, viewed and shown like videos and games and that kind of thing. So I think it kind of, I use a screen as a tool in my own home. Another project inside the studio is a family hub. Okay, setting up a hub where you organize your schedules, your calendars, your shopping lists, your to-do lists, all of that stuff in one place. And I do that digitally, right? So I have a screen up in my kitchen with our calendar, for example, with reminders, with shopping lists. And as I say, I'm not against screens as an animal. Like screens are okay, but it's all about how we use them, right? Are we always glued to the screen? Are we incapable of managing our time without a screen? Can we relate to each other? A lot of the problems that kids have today is that they are communicating via text message and they can't read body language or tone of voice or eye contact in the same way that we could when we were growing up. That's actually been backed up by research. That's the type of thing that you want to make sure is not happening to your kids, not our kids in the studio. We are not going to let that happen to them, right? Okay, next question is from the storyteller, and she says, I have an autistic 6-year-old, nonverbal. Screen time seems to be the only way he regulates himself. What is your advice to reduce screen time and what to teach him instead for self-regulation? I absolutely love your work. Okay, so I do want to repeat a disclaimer that I said in the beginning, which is that I am not in any way, shape, or form an expert on any kind of neurodivergence, right? I talk about things like sensory seeking kids and ADHD and autism, but it's not my area of expertise. So it's really important that you speak to your clinicians or whoever's guiding you on this journey more than me. Okay, but I'll just give you my ideas. Okay, so the first thing is, first of all, whatever's working with a child who has extra challenges, don't take it away. Don't stop what's working. Okay, you need to use the tools that work and that help you. And I know that in those cases, screen time can be a massive savior for a lot of kids to help them to develop their verbal cues or communication or focus or all sorts of things. Okay, so it's not that screens are bad, right? They're a tool in this case that your child uses to self-regulate. Now, when you say self-regulate, I wonder if this is a tool that they are using. You said he's nonverbal, if they're using for communication and that kind of thing. It's one thing. Self-regulation, it would be ideal to try and see if there are ways that we can swap that out, right, and replace it with additional things, with additional ways to calm him, to help him regulate himself, right? Maybe it's water play, which a lot of children find very soothing, kinetic sand, swinging or bouncing. I'm a big proponent of indoor swings, hanging up a hook. You can watch my video on YouTube about this, or in Reclaim Play, I tell all about it and I share my indoor swings list. But you just hang up a hook and you can switch out different swings. One of my favorites is the raindrop swing from funandfunction.com. I think I have a discount code somewhere I can try and find you. Weighted blankets, bubbles, light projectors, right? All sorts of things that actually have been shown to regulate the nervous system, right? Not just the behaviors, but actually calm the body down. Okay. Another thing that could be really helpful is to create predictable routines around screens. Okay. So instead of allowing screens anytime, you want to set clear, repeatable when, where, how long rules. Okay. Structure. I think all children really thrive on structure, and that seems to be particularly true for autistic children as well, right? So you use visual timers maybe, or a visual schedule where you say, okay, we're first doing trampoline, then tablet, something like that. So you can build the anticipation for the transition and build up tolerance without the meltdowns, if that makes sense. And then you want to teach the regulation through the body, not just the behavior. Okay, so remember this idea that self-regulation in a child starts with co-regulation from the parent, right? We are supposed to help our children to regulate themselves by being regulated ourselves. Okay, so even if your child is not verbal, your child can learn to find calm by actually feeling it with you. Okay, like putting our hand over their hand and breathing deeply and trying to help them regulate even without a screen. Okay, maybe slow joint compressions, right? Little massages. Not all autistic children like touch or respond well to touch. I'm just giving you some examples of things that have helped my students in the past. Mirroring calm gestures and sounds, right? When you yourself are calm and you help your child to see that we're being calm now. Music, rhythm games, any kind of predictability is going to be really helpful, right, in that regard. Now, many autistic kids need their screen time longer than their neurotypical peers. Again, I say need loosely because I don't know that they need them. I just hear this from people in the industry and from parents, and it's hard sometimes to know what's the chicken and the egg. Like, do they really need it, or do we feel that they need it because it's hard for us, which is also a reason, right? So I wouldn't necessarily see it as a failure at all, but rather as a stepping stone, right? And now, if you want to make a change and you have done your research and your clinician is on board and all of that, they're not taking it away, but rather broadening the toolbox, finding more ways for your child to self-regulate that isn't just reliant on a screen, if that is possible. Okay, so again, I know that autism is a very broad umbrella term that includes within it lots of different things. It's not my area of expertise. Some of these things might be completely impossible or unrelatable or irrelevant for you, and some of them might be useful to you. So I hope that lands the story, Taylor. Okay. Josie writes, how do we have a more positive attitude with our own children? If we've grown to have a sarcastic attitude, how can we help ourselves change so that we can better model for our children? Has this been an issue for you, and have you been able to correct it? Okay. All right. So we're shifting away from screens a little bit with this question here, but inside the studio, one of the things that I think is the most valuable that my students get in there is mindset coaching. And I want to just take a moment to explain what that is, okay? Because we live in a world that's highly pathologized, diagnostic, therapeutized, right? People are always talking about getting therapy for this and getting therapy for that, or using diagnostic or pathological labels to define certain things, right? Like depression and trauma and gaslighting and withdrawal and all these different terms that get thrown around. But I love the way that Josie has phrased this question, because she's just simply asked, how do we have a more positive attitude? I've become grumpy or sarcastic, and I want to help myself become less pessimistic and more optimistic, be more positive so that I can model that for my children. And this question is right on the money. It's exactly correct. And the reason I say that is because what basically all of us need is help with our own thought patterns that keep us feeling like a victim, feeling sorry for ourselves, feeling aggravated, irritated, grumpy, angry, disappointed, frustrated, sad, lonely, isolated, all sorts of feelings that we feel that make our life a bit more miserable and that make us more miserable with our kids, right? Many parents feel that parenting is not joyful. It's not fun. It's difficult. It's draining. It's exhausting. I'm doing it wrong. I always feel like a failure. I always feel guilty. I always feel ashamed. I'm messing this up. I can't handle it, is the general feeling that many of us have. And I've certainly had those feelings in the past, Josie. You've asked me, have I changed this? Then the answer is absolutely yes. I used to be ridden with guilt, ridden with worry and anxiety, right? So I think also in our culture, many of us are kind of married to our anxiety. We take it with us everywhere we go. We nurture it, we grow it, and almost a token of our love for our children is just how anxious we feel about them, how we're always worrying about them and their future. Let me know in the comments if this is something that you can relate to, if you feel that, if that's something that's true for you, that you feel like you're always worrying that you haven't done enough, that something might happen to them, that you're not equipping them, that your home isn't fill in the blank enough, something, right? And so why do I focus on mindset coaching? the reason that we feel these difficult feelings is often because of cognitive fallacies. And cognitive fallacies are just skewed ways of us thinking. We think in catastrophizing terms, we personalize things, we think in black and white thinking, we minimize the good stuff and we maximize the bad stuff. We walk around with a bit of a chip on our shoulder, taking things personally. We are constantly on high alert and anxious about things that might go wrong. And so I think all of that lends itself to having a very pessimistic, kind of withdrawn, blue, gray, humdrum outlook on our lives. And many of us aren't walking around with a pep in our step, feeling the sense of adventure, feeling the sense of mission, feeling the sense of purpose. Like, wow, I'm a parent, and this is an exciting project that I get to do. Right? We don't feel like I get to do it. We feel like I have to do it. And so this question from Josie is really, really important. How do we develop a more positive attitude with our own children? And what that starts with is brain training. You've heard the idea that you are the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. Well, I think today that's still true, but it's become digital. We're like the sum total of the 5 podcasts we listen to the most, right? Or the 5 YouTube channels that we listen to, or Instagram accounts that we follow the most. And if we are not surrounded by people who seem to feel empowered, who don't have a victim mindset, who are the agents in their own life, who are crafting a meaningful life, who are enjoying the relationship with their children, who are building something inspiring that we can look up to. If we're surrounded by people who are struggling through a lot of friction and tension or divorce in their marriage, people who are always irritable or angry or permissive or dismissive with their kids, people who are a bit checked out in that way, households that feel a bit dysfunctional, like they don't have any boundaries, they don't have any rules, they don't have any expectations. All of those types of things influence us, right? They're contagious. We're very, very social creatures. And so the best way to develop a more positive attitude is to surround yourself with uplifting ideas, with helpful ideas, with inspiring ideas. We kind of have to put the blinders on and block out all the noise, block out all the comparisons, all the perfectionism, all of the unrealistic accounts of perfect lives. The illusions that are being presented to us on social media. We need to block out all of the judgments, all of the polarization in the political world, all of the noise and the just non-stop judgments and conflicting advice and paradoxical advice about parenting, and start to create an inner sense of calm and focus and an inner sense of mission. Like, I am here building something meaningful. I am here building something for the future, building a legacy, building something joyful, building some culture. This is a piece of culture, my home, right? My home is my craft. It's what I'm crafting. It's what I'm creating. What's the atmosphere like? What does it look like? Is it organized? Is it decluttered? Is it pleasant to live in? What kind of relationship do we have with people around us? What kind of relationship do we have with time, with money, with our community, with health, with our bodies? All of these things are questions that we get to ask and answer in how we raise our children. And if you're upset about the state of the world, if you have, upset opinions about anything that's going on out there, then I think the most profound answer, the most powerful answer is what you do in here. It's like, okay, but I'm raising my kids in this way, right? And that's how that's going to be different. So I've said a couple of things here. One is to block out the negative noise, right? Not to follow accounts that make me feel like I'm not doing a good job, not to follow accounts that are confusing, not to have so much input, even if it's all good input, just to have less of it, to calm the brain, right? And then to surround myself with people who are inspiring, with ideas that are helpful and realistic, and to get on board a train where I'm thinking, wow, I'm tasked with a really cool job. I'm crafting the future, right? And then it's the brain training. Okay, the brain training addresses the cognitive fallacies. This is something I do inside the studio every single month in office hours. We talk about what beliefs are holding us back. What are the cognitive fallacies that are making us see things in a skewed way? I'll give you an example. Just this week, one of my students last week, we'll call her C. C came in and asked a question about her children, saying they're always fighting and they aren't helpful half the time. And, she was just expressing a lot of kind of negativity and sarcasm about her children, like you are here, Josie, right? And I reflected back to her and I coached her to change the way she was looking at the situation, to reframe her kids. Because the truth is that she could notice that her kids are incredible kids, that they're amazing, that they're generous, that they're fun, that they have a sense of humor, and that they can be sweet. But also, they're just kids. They're just growing and developing. It's normal for kids to have sibling fights. It's normal for kids to have rude back talk or not to listen the first time. Or now we want to correct those behaviors, certainly, but it's also normal. And she had to have that reframe to see it in a more positive light. Okay. And sometimes we have to have that reframe to see ourselves in a more positive light, to see the world in a more positive light, to see our homes or our partners or our children or our finances or anything in a more positive light. And it is worth doing that because people who are optimistic get better results. People who see things with positivity, with an empowered sense, who feel like they're agents, who feel like they have authorship, who feel like they're more in control, they are likely to get much better results. People who are positive and optimistic, they make more money than pessimists. They are more successful in their relationships than pessimists. They even live longer than pessimists. Okay, this is a really good idea to develop our brain in a more positive, optimistic direction because it's going to get much, much better results in our lives. And what's also true is it's going to get much better results in our children's lives. Our children need to grow up with someone who believes in them, with someone who believes in themselves, with someone who has confidence, with someone who knows what they stand for, who knows what they're leading them towards, who knows what the rules are, who knows how to set the expectations, who's very confident in themselves as a leader. Now, if you've ever been led by a confident, inspiring leader, you know just how energizing that is. You know how that calls you to a higher purpose, how you're like, yes, I can do this, I should do this, I will do this, because that leader inspires you. You look up to them and you're like, I want to be like you, I want to please you, I want to do good work with you. I like what you're building in the world. I believe in your mission. I'm with you, right? And that is what our kids need and deserve from us. Okay, that is what parenting is. It's not putting a roof over their heads and feeding them. That's just glorified babysitting. That's just provision. That's not what parenting is. Parenting is leadership. And so, Josie and everyone else, I really invite you into the studio because that's where you learn leadership skills. That's where you learn how to be that inspiring, clear, clairvoyant. You have clarity, you have conviction, and you can lead your child towards an inspiring future. And of course, you're going to be optimistic about that. Now, beyond that, you also need to establish great behaviors, great habits. Okay. People who are optimistic and positive tend to do things that are good for them. Okay. They tend to work out. They tend to sleep well. They tend to eat well. They tend to get out in nature. They tend to get off their phones. They tend to spend time with their community, right? This is kind of like a virtuous cycle. The more positive things we do for ourselves, the more positive we feel, the more positive things we do for ourselves, etc. So it becomes more of a lifestyle that I'm leading a positive life. I really hope that gives you some answers, Josie, and I would love to see you inside the studio so we can carry on our process together. All right, I think this is going to be the last question for today, although there are some amazing questions coming up about sibling rivalry, about not raising people pleasers, about preparing a 2-year-old for a new sibling, about Asperger's syndrome, about, again, sibling relationships, a lot about sibling relationships, about appropriate, respectful behavior from children, not being sensitive to others, all sorts of amazing questions. But because we've gone on a long time here today, I think we should close up and I will come back and do another session like this. So make sure that if you have a question, don't let me off the hook. I will answer really hard questions, juicy questions, controversial questions, difficult questions, whatever it is in your mind. You can send it in to hello@HiFam if you want to send it in anonymously, but even better would just be to drop it in the comments on YouTube because that's where I will most likely catch it. Last question. Sinette says, how to set a limit, boundaries of a child not saying bad words or fighting when they don't feel good or when they feel angry. Okay. So I think what Sinette is asking is, how do I set a limit on naughty words, right? On bad words. If a child is saying something, maybe that's a swear word, or maybe something really bad, like, I don't know if I can say this on YouTube, I'll K you, right? Like I'll do something terrible to you. If you are trying to stop a child saying a word, it's one of those very difficult boundaries to set, because you don't control their mouth, right? You can't like pick them up and take them somewhere else, so they can say whatever they want to say, right? They have freedom of speech. So here's what I would say with the words, okay? If a child's already angry, it's not a teachable moment. It's going to be a really hard time to explain to them that that's not how we talk. Okay. Even if a child says something like, "Oh, I just want to die," or "I just want to blow this house up," or something crazy, right? If they are triggered, what's actually happening in their brain is that their prefrontal cortex is not online. They can't process lessons. They're in fight or flight mode. And when we're in fight or flight mode, we are reactive. We're reacting as if a saber-toothed tiger just came up to us and we have to save ourselves. So we're all systems go, except for the thinking planning system, the system that can be pro-social, that can be polite, that can be politically correct, that can actually regulate ourselves. That system is offline. And so the first thing to do when a child is angry, is in the throes of a tantrum or a meltdown or fury or anything that involves this kind of wave, right? Of it gets very, very, very intense and then it eventually subsides, is to ride the wave. You have to learn to ride the wave. You have to learn to let those emotions subside. Okay. So the emotions get very, very intense. Don't start talking to them about bad language. But what you can do during that time is to remove them from the situation. What do I mean by that? Well, just think about it like if you went to a bar and your friend got terribly drunk. Okay. You would take away their car keys if you're a good friend, right? You would not let them drive. You would make sure that you are putting them somewhere safe, on your couch, in their bed, somewhere to sleep it off. Okay. Why? Because drunkenness subsides, right? And then their ability to reason and to behave appropriately comes back online. And then you can have a conversation about the choices you've made, etc., etc. Anger is very similar to being drunk in that we're out of control. We do and say things we don't mean. We shouldn't be allowed to make life-changing decisions. We don't sign contracts. We don't operate heavy machinery. And children should not be allowed to destroy relationships or property just because they're very angry. And so what that means is you actually have to keep them safe from themselves. So a child who's very, very angry needs to be removed from the situation. Okay, you need to keep them safe in a separate place, not in wherever they were, throwing things, yelling bad things at people. If they're yelling profanities, they're put in their room. Okay, you're going to calm down. We're going to let this pass. And you don't do that out of a place of anger, and it's not a punishment. It's a way of keeping them safe and helping them allow their emotions to pass. Okay. Once their emotions have subsided, you reconnect, you're there for them, etc. And you can say some words are words that we should never say. Okay. I don't want you using the F word. That's not an appropriate word to use. I don't want you threatening to hurt people. Okay. Even when we're very, very angry. Okay. You can use words like like no words, or you can use words like I'm so mad. Okay. I'm just so mad right now. Right. You can give them alternative words and say, I would like you never to use those words because those words are really, really hurtful. And even I know you didn't mean it. I know you spoke it in anger. We all say things we don't mean when we're angry. But it's hard to take words back once you've said them. And there are some words that should never cross our lips. Okay. We never say, I hate you to the people that we love. We never threaten, disaster on people. Just like I'm not going to let you throw things or bite or hit. I don't want you speaking that way. Okay. So that's when you coach them, is when their brain can actually hear the lesson. Okay. And if they have said something rude to you or to other people, they can then learn to make amends. And repair is a really important step here, where you tell the child, you can write a sorry letter to grandma because you spoke that way in front of her and it was very unpleasant and rude. And that teaches them to take accountability for their behaviors, even when they've done it, in the throes of anger, when their prefrontal cortex was offline. Okay. Lisa, I really hope that helps. No, wait, that's from Sinette. Sinette, I really hope that helps. Let me know. Sinette, I would love to see you inside of the studio. All of you who are here, who are curious about the studio, want to find out more about it, go to highfound.com/studio and make sure you get in on the wait list so that you can take advantage of the early bird, which is ending, I think, this Friday. And also make sure you take advantage of my No Questions Goes Unanswered coaching. This is the type of coaching that we do every month inside the studio, and in fact, more often than that. But I don't do it regularly outside of the studio. And so if this is the type of thing that you'd like to have in your back pocket, always know that your questions are going to be answered, that you have one place that you can focus on, that you're building a family culture, that you're becoming an inspiring leader. All of that stuff I've value packed inside of the studio, and I would love to see you inside there. If you have any questions for me whatsoever about the program, feel free to ask. We've been running it for years. We have incredible results. We have members from all over the world. We have every testimonial you can possibly imagine. And I'm really happy to share all of those with you. If you're on the fence, if you're thinking about it, if you want that kind of support, if you want to become that parent that you always knew you could become, but you just need a little bit of accountability and coaching that we all need to get there, then I would love to welcome you in. Okay. Jillian says, Avital, you're the best. This will be my 4th year in the studio, and I can't wait to see what you have in store for us. Thank you so much. What a beautiful thing to say. I really, really appreciate it. And it's so lovely to see my studio members here on my live sessions outside of the studio. We'll, of course, see each other inside of the studio as well. But those of you who are on the fence, I just invite you to take advantage of our offer. Try it out, get in there, see what it's all about, see the curriculum. We have leadership curriculum, we have the family projects, we have the mindset coaching. We have a lot of bonuses, like which values to teach your kids and exactly how to teach them: accountability, responsibility, integrity, all sorts of things like that. If that's the type of thing that you're not getting from your school, that you're not getting from your community, that you didn't get at home growing up, and you would like to be able to give it to your kids, that's my job. That's what I do. I read all the books. I don't know about all the books, but I read many books. I read research. I experiment on my own children in my own household. I distill everything for you. I package it up in a way that's really digestible and bingeable, right? You could just watch the videos. You get the PDF guides. It's very proactive. It's very easy. And you can get the bottom line, so you don't have to do all that work, because you have your own job to do in your own life. And this is my job to do it for you. If you are watching the replay of this, make sure to let me know your key takeaway in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any videos. We'll be dropping another good one tomorrow, and I can't wait to see you on the inside. Much, much love, and bye.